So everybody, thanks for stopping by the channel. I'm live and on location today in Rochester, Minnesota on what I like to refer to as Fort Cathedral Corner. What do I mean by Fort Cathedral Corner? Let me show you. Right over there we have a left-leaning, supposedly Reformed church. Right over there we have a Roman Catholic church. And right here we have the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS, Mormons, as you would know. And right over there we have what I refer to as the state church, or the State Center of Indoctrination. It's government school, Mayo High School. So what am I doing out here today? Why am I on Fort Cathedral Corner? I am on Fort Cathedral Corner because I want to talk a little bit about Governor Walz and how he lost. What did he lose? Well, for the first time in over a year worth of restrictions on church gatherings, worship gatherings, Governor Walz had his little tail end handed to him in court by two churches that were represented by the Upper Midwest Law Center. Upper Midwest Law Center decided to start taking on First Amendment cases and civil liberties and constitutional liberties and Bill of Rights type cases up here in the Upper Midwest, and they represented two churches. I can't remember their exact names, but it doesn't really matter. But they took the governor to court, and they won. And their argument was the governor doesn't have a right to dictate where people gather for worship, how many people can gather for worship, and what the requirements for gathering for worship can be. So they took it to court, they drug it out, they fought it out, and they finally won on May 5th. They won a ruling that forced Tyrant Timmy, Commissar Walz of the People's State of Marxisota, to give up his restrictions on church gatherings. Now, what's my reason for standing here on Fort Cathedral Corner? Well, mostly it's because the vast majority of churches in the United States, but especially here in the state of Marxisota, they refused to fight. They refused to do the right thing, which was to resist tyrannical rules from a petty despotic tyrant like Tyrant Timmy. So, why is that important? Well, one of the reasons it's important is, for one, a lot of people who profess to be Christian, like the LDS or the Roman Catholics, or people over here at these left-leaning churches, like that one right there behind me. They will appeal to things like societal pressure. They'll appeal to things like Romans 13 and say, oh, we have to obey the governor. We have to obey people that are appointed over us. We can't go around fighting things just because we don't like them. And, well, that's kind of hogwash. As far as I know, now there are churches in Rochester, in the Rochester area, that have ignored the governor. And I'm proud to say that I know a few of those people. But there are also churches in the Rochester area who caved into every single thing that the governor said to do. Every single one of them. None of them would challenge the governor. None of them dared to take the governor to court. None of them dared to, shall we say, tell the governor to shove off. And why is that? What on earth is the purpose of churches caving in when a person who is an elected servant, such as a governor, or somebody like Keith Ellison steps in and says, oh, we're going to tell you what you can and cannot do? Why? Well, it's cowardice. It's fear. Most of the churches in the state of Marxisota are 501c3. And they're afraid that if they lose that 501c3 status, they themselves will in turn also end up losing their churches. Why? Because people aren't going to want to come to a church and give into the offering plates and whatever other donations there may be to the cause, if you will. They don't want to run the risk that those people are not going to give anymore. And that's why so many pastors pastors. I have to do air quotes with one hand because I'm holding the camera with the other. So many pastors won't talk about these things. They won't talk about what's wrong with our culture today. They won't talk about what's wrong with our society today. They won't talk about what's wrong with tyrannical rule, because it delves into that socio-political background that they've been told they can't talk about, or they'll lose that 501c3 status. And it's high time, quite frankly, that churches stop being afraid. It's high time that pastors stop being afraid. It's high time that pastors and others, and it's past time now because the governor lost, but it's high time that they start speaking out on stuff. They need to start challenging Marxism. They need to start challenging the Gramscian theory that's being foisted on us to end our liberties. They have to. Even if it means speaking out against the government, even if it means defying governors, even if it means they come and try and shut your church down. Look, we need that to happen, all right? That has to start happening in the United States. Because nobody in this country is going to wake up if they don't see the government doing things like what we see happening in Canada. Keep in mind, Canada arrested, a conservative province of Canada arrested a pastor for holding church services and threw him in a detention center by force for daring to have a church service. Let that sink in. Then they seized the church, surrounded it with not one, but 2 layers of chain link fence, and now they have security guards outside of it. And then just the other day, they arrested another pastor for encouraging people to go to church and refuse to follow church restrictions. Now, Canada doesn't have the same protections that the American church has. But the next time they decide to roll out restrictions, we're primed. We're primed. We're going to do whatever they say, no matter what it might be. We're going to follow them because we've shown we will. And we've shown we're afraid of their power. And why do we let that happen? What we need is the next time, and there will be a next time, with the Biden-Harris co-presidency, with Tyrant Timmy getting ready to run for re-election, there will be another pandemic. There will be another scare. There will be something that comes along and replaces the COOF. And we've demonstrated our churches. What was once the backbone of resisting tyranny, what led to the American War for Independence, was the preaching of godly Christian men, particularly of the Reformed tradition, the Calvinistic Reformed tradition, and somewhat Lutheran. I love my Lutheran brothers. But those people have now been replaced, by and large, in the United States with spineless men who are not shepherds anymore, but they're hirelings. That's it. And they went along with everything because they were afraid they would lose what they did have if they didn't go along. So ostensibly, every single one of these that went along is no different than the one over there. The one that's bought and paid for by taxpayer dollars that indoctrinates our children. And so the next time they come with the next round of shutdowns, for whatever the case may be, most of our supposed Christians, so-called Christians, most of our supposed pastors and lay leaders and elders or whatever, they're just going to cave in and go along because they demonstrated they don't have enough spine to fight. And what we need is Christian men to stand up in the pulpit and say, we're not going to comply. We're not going to follow your guidelines. You don't get to tell us what we do and do not do in our churches. When we gather for worship, how we gather for worship, and where we gather for worship. You don't get to dictate that to us. We need to openly defy. We need to openly stand up in pulpits and say we're going to defy. And then we need to encourage our people to defy. That's what needs to happen. And then we need the government to come in and say we're going to shut you down, because that will spread the church. There was a saying in the days of the ancient church, as history recorded what was happening, that said, hey, the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. You want to see true biblical Christianity come back in the United States and get rid of all this modern garbage that's happening? The seeker sensitivity and the health and wealth gospel and all of that? You want to get rid of that? Be a church that defies tyrannical government. And you will see the gospel, and you will see true Christianity spread like it's never spread before in this country. Or at least not since the Great Awakening. So until next time, Sic Semper, Tyrannus.